Hello, everybody, and welcome to an episode of Humans of Wharton with Oksana Falenchuk, Wharton MBA class 2006. Oksana, welcome.
Thank you.
Oksana, we are into 21 days of Russian aggression in Ukraine. You are from Ukraine. How are you feeling?
Thank you. I'm still in shock, I think, as everyone around us. I'm at the same time very proud of the people in Ukraine and how stoic and heroic and resourceful they are. So that gives me strength. I'm part of a big community here in New York of Ukrainians, and that certainly gives me strength because we are working very hard trying to provide help to Ukraine.
Tell us more about that. You're CFO of Razom for Ukraine. What is Razom and what exactly you guys are doing now?
Yes, Razom is probably one of the largest Ukrainian communities in the US. It's a nonprofit organization that I joined in 2017. It was around since 2014 when the war in Ukraine really started, with Russia invading Luhansk and Donetsk regions and annexing Crimea. And so people basically came together. They're mostly kind of younger generation, a fourth wave of immigration people who work in tech and finance, still have families, connections in Ukraine. So they came together and they just tried to provide support to Ukraine, from here. And since then, we've sort of been operating more like, supporting culture and education and working with different Ukrainian NGOs. And then, 21 days ago, 3 weeks ago, we just found ourselves in the midst of it. And we've, on the one hand, started growing really, really fast because donations started coming in. On the other hand, we have teams who are trying to get aid to Ukraine. And so our goal is to convert these donations into medical supplies, into humanitarian aid as quickly as possible.
And I know that Razom is run entirely by volunteers. So every donated dollar goes directly to the programs.
That's right. Yeah. So
Is it still the case?
We have almost no administrative expenses. Our office is in the East Village, where we pay just a few $100s to, one of the older Ukrainian organizations for our rent, and and then otherwise it's just software licenses and stuff like that. We are finding ourselves now in a place where we certainly need to have a better infrastructure to manage the scale and the scope of what we do. So we are still all volunteers, but we will need to have a professional accountant, a lawyer, and whoever else, because that's just what we have to be. Just to give you an idea, we, in previous years, we used to sort of collect maybe $250,000 at best in donations per year. We went from that to over $10 million in 2 weeks' time, 3 weeks' time. So we're growing very fast, which is amazing. On the other hand, I wish we didn't have the reason for, which we're growing so fast right now. So it always gives me pause when I see, big money coming in, but then I see what we're spending it on, and I wish we didn't have to.
Many Whartonites have donated to Razom. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank everybody for their support and their continued support. What can you tell them as a leadership of Razom about the help that they've provided so far, and what can they do now?
I do think about my Wharton network a lot, and so many people have reached out. People who I haven't spoken with in years, which is nice, and people have offered all sorts of help, and that's extremely grateful. I'm extremely grateful for that. Well, first of all, the money is going directly into the hands, and we have, people, we have boots on the ground. So that's one thing. Second thing is, the net. What I want people to know is we're here for a long haul. Unfortunately, it seems like even if the war ends tomorrow, it's still so much. There's going to be so much to do. And Ukraine will be, unfortunately, struggling for a long time. So we just need to keep this conversation going. I think that's the most important thing. We see a lot in the news right now. I worry that it might stop in a few weeks or months, and we sort of go back to our regular lives, and we just can't let that happen. And so having the conversation about Ukraine is very important. And that's why I try to be, I'm not a public person, but I'm trying to be out there on social media. And we do have a team of people at Razom who advocate, who do protests, who create art, just, to be at the forefront of people's minds all the time. And I think that's the other thing we can do as a Wharton community, in addition to the financial and the networking power that we have. We should keep the conversation going.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, one of the best ways to help is to give your voice.
Yes. Yeah.
What do you think people can do? Is it sharing the news? Is it reaching out to their representatives? What would you ask your classmates to do about this?
All of the above. We have a sort of an action guide on at Razom where, the things you can do. You can go to a protest. You can write to your elected representative. You can donate. We have a whole list of charities where you can donate to. And people sort of think about it that way, like, maybe at first we need to make sure that people are protected and safe and don't die. And so some people want to give directly to the army, which, as Razom, we don't do. It's not part of our mission. So we have resources where you can give directly to the army. We have resources where you can give to different causes, different charities, some that specialize in medical help, others that help with refugees, and stuff like that. So I will send you that handy link, and I will ask you to plug it. But I use that as a guide to myself and to talking to others, when people ask, what can I do to help Ukraine?
And all of those NGOs that you post, all of them have been vetted by Razom.
Correct. Yes, and many of them we know and we work with. So yes.
Yeah, it's very important right now to be diligent to make sure that the money goes where it needs to go. So Razom, we can know for sure that the donations to Razom or to its trusted partners would do the work to save people.
Yes, yeah. And I'll tell you from kind of our inside perspective, and it's probably an interesting case in risk management and in operations strategy. It's, action versus kind of thinking about all the cons and pros of doing this. And right now, we certainly lean towards action, right? Like we just, for example, if there's an order that I can place for Celox pads, which is sort of blood clotting, blood stopping, first aid supply, and this is a vendor that I've never heard about, but we just found them, and there's only that much due diligence you can do. You need to get your hands on those, and you need to get them there as fast as possible, and that's what we try to do, right? And I think in a normal world we would have done it probably a lot more scientifically, and sort of would have built up scale and supply chain and thought about all the nuances. Right now, it's just you have to act fast because you want these things to get there as fast as possible.
Yes, it looks like the war has prompted disruption of conventional supply chain and operations processes, and we're observing it right now. I imagine that it will have huge repercussions going forward, the way we operate about everything. Even from what I'm seeing, this decentralized structure of volunteering has been truly remarkable. I wonder what your perspective has been on that.
100%. Like, we try to organize as teams. I used to do a lot of sort of donation processing and reporting and stuff like that. I don't do that anymore because we have volunteers who can do that process, that anymore, because we have a team who know what they're doing and they're focusing on that. We have a number of purchasing teams for different categories, emergency medical, hospital equipment, non-medical stuff, and they just sort of do this crowd purchasing amongst themselves, right? So I don't need to do that. I think the most fascinating is the logistics part, and especially when it gets to delivering stuff within Ukraine. I don't think there's any sort of science or strategy to it right now, other than you just need to have people who know how to drive and can risk their lives, right? And so it's usually people in kind of vans and small buses. You can't really do big trucks because they're targets, and they need to know, that the routes are safe. So there's a network of people who inform them, and you just need to protect their names. We can't talk about that because obviously they're targets, and so all this kind of theory, I think, breaks down here, right? It's you just do what you can, and here it's really like, small and nimble is probably the best way to go.
Bottlenecks that you're still facing with procurement and delivery, maybe there's something that you could use support of our Wharton community with?
Every day is a fire drill. I think communication is the biggest one. We are in different time zones, people in Ukraine who actually work in the warehouses, receiving shipments and sorting shipments. I can't, like, they're heroes. The work they're doing is just amazing. And communication, that's like, I'll give you an example. We were expecting a big shipment in Lviv yesterday. We were trying to get hold of them. Nobody was answering. everybody starts getting agitated, and come to find out they had air sirens, and so they had to go and hide in the basements, and that's why they couldn't do any unloading and any sorting. So that's just the realities of it. I know we have people who are doing a lot of international shipping and logistics, and that's probably the help that we would need the most. And we're just kind of, trying to figure it out as we go.
Okay, so it sounds like the best way to help still is to donate, to fund this operation for Razom.
Yes, 100%. I think right now we are at a place where we have connections with large vendors, large suppliers. We have connections with hospitals, and actually, large charities who deal in sort of medical supplies and emergency aid. And so I think getting money we probably know how to, deploy money effectively now. And we just need to keep doing this, because, sometimes you want to think like, what's the addressable market? How much of this do we buy? And I think the need is there, and it will, a lot of the stuff will be needed. And it's just right now you can't think in those terms. You just need to provide as much as you can.
This unity that we have been observing, where not only Ukrainians, but people from all over the place, people with zero connection to Ukraine, have been stepping up as volunteers and doing whatever they can to help Ukraine. What has been your experience about this?
Just that. It's amazing to see how people have stepped up and been supportive. My personal story is that my family evacuated through Poland, and people in Poland just opened their house to them, and with no questions, and that's just how amazing it is. There's people are opening their homes, people are providing supplies. I think that's, we've not seen anything like that before in Europe, and I'm very happy that it's happening.
And your family, when they were evacuating, one of your family members had special needs. Can you tell the story about that?
Yes, it was a miracle. And there's so many situations like this where, families have grandma or grandpa who are sick and bedridden, and that's stopping them from leaving, or they have young kids, or the wife doesn't want to leave the husband behind. And it's very hard because, it's usually till the last minute when they make that decision, which makes their passage even harder. I mean, my family story is relatively, easy in that sense. But it was a miracle because my uncle, who is old and frail and bedridden, he doesn't walk and couldn't move. But we were able to find an ambulance service that just moved them across the border. And then we had another ambulance in Poland who met them. And so he made his passage to Germany, where was his daughter and her family now. And we're so happy because he can get, the medical treatment that he couldn't get in Ukraine. And hopefully his life, will be extended, and he'll just have a better quality of life that way. I think that was, and it took them a long time to decide. But, my family is from Western Ukraine, and we have this story in our family where after World War II, part of our family left. They ran away from the Soviet Union, and they So my grandmother's brother and his family, they just kind of sort of took off and left. And they spent years in displaced persons camps, first in Germany, and then they moved to the US here. And so maybe having that experience in our family, I think they made that decision that they had to leave, and they kind of knew how this plays out, which I know many people in Eastern Ukraine, they don't have that history and that experience. And maybe that's why they're so hesitant to leave. And we were talking with you how hard it is to talk to your family members when, they can't make that decision, and you feel helpless, that you can't help.
Yes, and they stay in harm's way.
Yeah.
Every day. Tell us about that history of running away from the Soviets. And that feeds into this whole delusion that Ukrainians are actually Russians or somehow belong to Russia.
You know what surprises me? Again, my story, and probably yours too, when we came here as students, right? I've spoken Ukrainian my whole life, right? I'm from a family that's, 100% Ukrainian. So I never had issues with my identity, but it's not as straightforward. Coming here as a student is in the 90s. We were friends with all kind of sort of post-Soviet folks, right? And we all spoke Russian, and I didn't think about my Ukrainian identity as much. The events of 2014 certainly changed all of that, and I think it changed it for everyone, right? I know many people who, your family may be from all over the world, but if you were born in Ukraine and you live in Ukraine and you understand what Ukraine stands for, which is, democracy and freedom and freedom of speech and, just prosperity, I think people have no issue with their identity. They know they're Ukrainian. And on the other hand, Russian people don't want this war either. I don't believe they do. It just breaks my heart how, brainwashed they may be by the media and the propaganda. And I'm sorry for them. I hope they take inspiration from what Ukrainians are doing right now. And I know it's not easy because the world is isolating Russia and just kind of going North Korea on them, right? But I hope that people can resist from within. And I hope that, the way Ukrainians fight gives them that strength and inspiration.
I want to take a step back and talk about the whole reasoning behind this war, as has been stated by Putin. One of the premises, according to him, is that Ukrainians and Russians are the same people, and that majority of Ukrainians want to be with Russia, and it's just a small Nazi regime of Ukrainian nationalists that is trying to turn majority of Ukrainians away from Russia. What is your perspective on this?
I don't even think about that. It's just such BS. We know this, we see this, we see who those Nazis are. They're women and children. I think I'm so glad that the world doesn't have that question anymore. I think it's black and white at this point. I don't spend too much time thinking about what his rationales might be. if that makes sense. I mean, right now we just need to focus on, stopping this war, and actually helping Ukrainians win the war, not just, minimize losses and casualties, but really, how about, support the people so they can win it?
Yeah, I'm with you. What would be the outcome, the best outcome, in your perspective?
The best outcome is that we win the war. Ukraine becomes free and sovereign, has all its territories back, and people come back, and we have a Marshall Plan for Ukraine to rebuild it, and the world knows what Russia is, and Putin's dead, and there's a revolution in Russia, and they elect a democratic government, and we all live happily ever after. That would be my ideal scenario, and I think that's what we all have in our mind, right? That's what we want to make happen. I do want people and the Wharton community to keep thinking about Ukraine and reach out to you and me, and just help us out with what we can do to win.
Thank you, Oksana. Thank you very much for taking this time out of what I'm sure is an incredibly busy and hectic day to make that help happen for Ukrainians. Thank you very much for sharing your message. And I also would like to thank our Wharton community for supporting us, for standing with us, and for helping us win. And once again, thank you, Oksana, and thanks everybody for watching. Stay tuned for more episodes of Humans of Wharton.